Hello and a very warm welcome to discussion today with your host Kriti Mishra. The gross GST revenue collected in the month of December 2020 is 1,15,174 crore. In line with the recent trend of recovery in the GST revenues, the revenues throughout the month of December 2020 are 12% higher than the GST revenues in the same month last year. During the month, revenues from import of goods was 27% higher, and the revenues from domestic transaction, including import of services, are 8% higher than the revenues from these sources during the same month last year. The GST revenues during December 2020 have been the highest since the introduction of GST, and it is for the first time that it has crossed 1.15 lakh crore mark. The highest GST collection till now was 1,13,866 crore in the month of April 2019. And for deeper insights, I'm joined by Mr. Jain, former president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and Mr. Jain Gupta, former secretary, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India. Welcome to Rajya Sabha Television, both of you. Mr. Gupta, coming to you first. GST collections have been the highest since its inception. These figures are extremely encouraging, indicate a sharp economic recovery. Your take, sir?
The increase in the GST collections in December are on account of, to my mind, three distinct factors. One of them, of course, is the pent-up demand which was there since the lockdown and which resulted in very large sales during the festive season in November. The November figures of GST get reflected in December as collection. So that is the first factor. The second factor is that there is an uptick in the economy. It is picking up, as is evident from various indices like the e-way bills, electricity consumption, electronic invoicing, and other factors. So that is also contributing to larger economic activity. The second factor is the simplification of many of the procedural problems which had been afflicting this GST collection, starting with the filling in of forms and scrutiny and the other aspects of procedures. Now, this has been an ongoing exercise for the past 1.5 years, and the department has managed to iron out most of the wrinkles which were there in the system. The introduction of Aadhaar-based GST registration, which was started a few months ago, has also yielded results. The third factor is tightening of the noose, in the sense that wrongdoers are getting caught, and the people who are filing their returns in an honest manner, honest taxpayers, they are being given facilitation and quick disposal of their problems. So in the recovery drive which has resulted, about 1,63,000 registrations of firms have been cancelled on account of non-filing of GST 3B form. So, and if you look at the last figures, December itself, 83 lakh filings have taken place of GST 3B, which is much higher than that of the previous year. And finally, wrongdoers have been prosecuted. GST 2B, which is basically about input tax credit, that was not getting filled properly, and people were taking the credit twice or thrice. Now, a lot of wrongdoers have been prosecuted on account of this kind of fraudulent activity. And overall, this recovery, I think, drive has also resulted in higher collections.
Absolutely, sir. Mr. Jain, I'd like to come to you that the government has ironed out all the wrinkles. Would you agree to these factors that he pointed out?
Yes, I would agree with Mr. Jain that yes, the government has wrinkled out all the issues stated that. But I will say the one thing which is very positive is the collection of 1,15,000 odd crore plus do indicate there is a flip in the economy, and the economy is on the rise. So that's a one factor. And see, we must agree to one thing. GST collection, the payment of GST taxes is a direct nexus with the economic activity which has taken place during the month. a person pays 5%, 12%, 18% GST only when make purchases or some activity have taken place. And this figure of 1,50,174 crore is the highest in the last 42 months of the GST life. We started GST on 1st July 2017, and it is 3.5 years plus now. We are saying this is one of the highest figure which has happened, which has come out. So one thing which is there is that economic activity during this month was at the highest level. And we must keep in mind that many of the sectors today are still not operating.
Right.
Many of the sectors today of the economy are operating at less than the optimum level. Take the case of the entertainment industry. Take the case of the hotels, hospitalities, aviation. You will agree that these are the areas of the economy which are performing, are either not performing or performing at a below level, because cinemas, all IT entertainment activities, banquet hall, all those are not working on that level. So even then, the growth and the level of the economic activity of the collection of GST indicated to 1,50,000 crore. Just imagine had these activities been operating, what would have been the collection? That's the area, and that shows Indian economy is back on the track, despite Corona crisis which happened in March 2020, and in the last, I think, the first quarter of this financial year 2021. April to June, we had a very, I think, the number which were very, very low. Then July to September, there was some recovery. And October to December, the recovery is, I believe, is one of the highest which is coming up. Now, coming to the factor which has helped it out, one, we started GST at a level where it has to take time to get stabilized. Now, over a period, we need to agree, yes, the GST system is getting stabilized. Whatever was the shortcoming, whatever the teaching problem that have been addressed, whether it is the tax rate, whether it is the administration, whether it is the enforcement mechanism, all factors, as Mr. Jain has explained in detail, yes, they have been taken care of, and that's why the people are starting. Thirdly, the enforcement mechanism has also been put in place,
yes,
and which is taking care, and we have been able to identify the people who have not been complying in those areas that have been. And then some compliance issues have been addressed, whether it is 2B, 3B, or eBay bill, all those have been stabilized. So it was a big economic reform post-independence, which has taken place when we have subsumed so many indirect taxes into GST, and we have brought a new GST regime. It has to take time. I am of the view now, since this growth is going to take place, it will make the life of the finance minister very, very comfortable, because she was due under pressure how to cope up with the tax issue, which are in the fiscal deficit and the revenue collection going down. And one thing we will agree, that GST is having a direct nexus to economic activity. If the GST collections are going up, we can show that India is on the path of economic recovery, and the growth rate will be very, very impressive in the year 21-22.
Absolutely, sir. The recovery has been faster than expected. But Mr. Das Gupta, as Mr. Jain is pointing out, that many sectors are not working at optimum capacity right now. So are we to understand that these figures are sustainable in future as well?
That is a matter of conjecture, but I agree with Mr. Jain that many of the sectors which used to contribute substantially, like the hospitality sector, restaurants, hotels, entertainment, marriage halls, large parties, for instance, which were hosted, which have all been, and cinema halls, then aviation, then tourism, all these things have come to almost negligible levels. So there will be a compensatory fillip to the GST collections. And on the other side, on the flip side, the pent-up demand, etc., and the festival season sales and restocking, that surge which took place in GST collections, that will get reduced to a certain extent. Now, the economic recovery, I think, from all the indices which have come out from different agencies, it is well underway and it has to be sustained. Now, that is the whole point, whether there is some third or fourth surge of COVID infections, and that again leads to, especially in view of the mutant, which is many of the cases have come to India as well. If that leads to, again, some kind of restriction or lockdown, then there would be a problem. But otherwise, if that does not take place, since we have two vaccines which are likely to get rolled out
Yes.
in about 10 days' time or so, I think we are firmly on the path to recovery, and GST collections will improve. They are likely to go up and set new records.
Absolutely, sir. Those are very important points that you made. Mr. Jain, coming to you. Three important points that Mr. Dasgupta mentioned. COVID fears, rollout of vaccine, and also pent-up festive demand. How sustainable are these figures?
See, I'm quite optimistic that these figures will be sustainable. I look at it from a different perspective. See, let's keep the COVID for on one side. We introduced GST in 2017, as I said earlier. Now, we must agree that the GST is getting stabilized. If we take into account the factor which COVID has affected, we take it aside, the GST is getting stabilized, and that's why these numbers are working around. Secondly, as regards the sustainability, we must keep in mind that in GST, there will be a hiccup in the number, not because of any economic activity or otherwise, because of the system of GST. We have a system of GST where you pay monthly taxes every month, and there is a quarterly system also. The figures of the third month will always be higher as compared to the earlier 2 months, because large returns comes up and compliance is increasing. There are people who are filing presumptive model of taxation. There are people who are in small sector. They are paying quarterly taxes, something like this. So that will be there. So one thing we need to go. Second, now the system has got stabilized. We say, okay, all right. So number will improve. Now, third factor is whether this number will be sustainable in the time to come.
Yes.
That will, as you rightly said, Janji, it will depend upon the economic activities, how far the economic activity get affected by the COVID. Now, as we see, the Indian numbers are getting down, and we are number at a reasonable level, and vaccine is on the horizon immediately and getting it immediately started in the next 7 days to 10 days. If that happens, obviously the economic activity will increase. The restrictions, the lockdown which we have on certain sector, aviation or hospitality, entertainment will get eased out, and people will be feeling more freedom and people will be moving out. If that happens, definitely yes, the number will increase. But in case, unfortunately, something happens which puts more restriction and there's something happen, so definitely there will be some restriction of the economic activity, the number may go down. But that should not detract the GST system itself. See, the first issue is whether the transition to the GST has been successful and whether the numbers are going to improve. These figures of the month December do indicate, yes, GST system has stabilized and the numbers are improving. Now, subject to the economic activities, which will be depending upon the, I think, lockdown or the economic restriction which we place because of the COVID-19, that will, of course, the number will get affected to some extent. In case there is improvement in the overall environment, this number will have a quantum jump. But on the contrary, if there are some restrictions which are far more what we are having in this month, then definitely the number may go down a little bit that way. That's my view on this.
Also the fact, sir, that there has been effective implementation. Mr. Dasgupta, the government has figures from IT, from customs, and also from GST, and they will use this data along with the technologies, emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, data analytics, the role of emerging technologies in improving the implementation.
I think the first point which comes to mind in this context is about compliance. Now, if one were to do it manually, for instance, GST Form 2B or 3B, it would be next to impossible with crores of returns being filed. The second point which arises in this context is to match the entries which have been made in one form and the credit which is getting taken over in the other form. Now, that should get done automatically. The third aspect is that, taking GST, customs, and income tax, because there are aspects which will overflow into the income tax returns as well, filed by companies, by entities, by individuals. So all these things can be done, scrutinized, and matched through artificial intelligence on real-time basis, if not real-time basis, within a few days of the filing or availability of these returns. So that is a huge improvement. And the Department of Revenue has introduced this. They are using artificial intelligence, and a lot of reforms have taken place in the last 2-3 years, for instance, of getting the bank accounts, for instance, of individuals. How many bank accounts do you have, and how much is the interest which you are getting? And that will get automatically reflected in the Form 26S of the income tax for individuals. So that is the kind of thing which is taking place, of interlinkages between the forms and the information filed by individuals, by entities, by business enterprises, large enterprises. And there, the role of artificial intelligence would be very, very important to detect flaws, to detect frauds, and to take corrective action.
Absolutely, sir. And you also mentioned
lead to better collections.
Yes, sir. You also mentioned about income tax and custom trends. Hold your thoughts there, sir. Mr. Jain, coming to you first. Compliance. How will the government ensure further ease of compliance?
See, let me first complete what Jain Pishaji has said it. The data which the department is going to get today will be much, much more stronger and much, much more, I think, useful. Because with that data, now GST will be indicating the consumer behavior, the consumer preference, and what items we are consuming and what are the important issues. See, now the GST, I think, has a HSN number where we know how many voter cards have been sold, how many food have been sold, which item has been more sold, which is the preference of our citizen, and what is the area, and which are the area which we need to address. I think this will give a lot of data to our economists to plan it out for the future. That's a very, very important aspect, I believe, that's of economy. But GST will be having such big data of the Indian 135 crore odd people, what they are eating, what they are wearing, how they behave, what they are spending, every data. So that will be a lot of data which will be useful in the coming issue. Now, coming to your issues of compliance is what need to be done, I believe. Now, with the online system getting stabilized and the GST and network getting all in place, I believe now, by and large, all issues which are on compliances have been settled. Now, it is for the enforcement agencies to ensure that whatever the compliances are coming up, now those compliances are used for the purpose of achieving those areas where we are finding that there are leakages on that ID issues. But still, looking to the experiences which we are getting from these compliances, as we say, there are 1.2 crore people who are registered, as per my information, under the GST, and that the returns are coming up 84, 85 lakh, which are one of the best figure. We need to find out those people who are still 30 lakh old people who are not filing the return, and what are the challenges which are coming up. And another area which is important, which I will just like to take up, is Swadeshi view, that how do we address the MSME sectors, because their cost of compliances on MSE for GST has gone a little bit up. Their working capital requirement has also gone up. So somewhere, I believe, down the line, GST Council will have to take up this issue, because now if the collection improve, the GST Council will have, I believe, that leverage to further relax certain compliance provision and certain compliance norm, so make the life of the MSME more easier and more friendly. And if MSE sector improves, obviously Indian economy will get improved and the employment opportunity will also increase. That's my view.
Absolutely, sir. That's a very welcome point that you're making. Mr. Das Gupta, you were talking about income tax and custom trends. Do you foresee a similar trend?
Income tax, I'm not very sure, but because the corporate tax component of income tax is the main contributor to the collections, and since industrial activity is picking up, it will definitely show an uptake. I think from the figures that the Department of Revenue has given out, we are about 9.9% or 10% behind our target till the end of the third quarter. But that is likely to improve because economic activity has improved, industrial activity has improved. So it is likely to go up, but not to the same extent as the GST collections in December. So that may be a difficult act to match by way of income tax and corporate tax collections, but it will definitely be much closer to the target than the 9.9% deficit that it is showing at the moment.
All right, it will be closer to the target. And before we end this conversation, closing comments from both my guests. Mr. Jain, big picture view of the economic recovery ahead and budget expectations.
I believe, it's a very encouraging picture which has emerged in the month of December. And I looked at when the finance minister presents her budget on 1st of February, these numbers will be quite helpful. As Mr. Jain said, that direct tax collections are likely to improve because when there is increased economic activity, it is not only the indirect tax, which is a direct tax, which also will be taken care of and which will improve. And I think the collection will get improved. And India future economic for 21-22 is bound to be bouncing back to what we normally have to have 7% or 8% GDP growth. We can ensure for that.
Mr. Dasgupta.
The last point I wanted to mention today is about the refunds. There is still a bit of a glitch in getting refunds for industry. And that is something which I think the department needs to work further on so that the working capital requirements get reduced and the wheels of industry can run smoothly.
Well, absolutely, sir. So there's compliance, effective implementation, and we do hope that these numbers are sustainable. On that note, thank you so much for joining us on this discussion.
Thank you.
So that's all we have for you in today's edition of Discussion Today. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha TV.